In this episode, I'm talking to James Hind, founder and CEO of Carwow. Carwow is an online platform for buying a new car or selling your old car. The website brings offers from thousands of partners to enable its customers to buy or sell their car quickly and easily. The platform is rich in content and well worth a visit to fully understand what makes Carwow so impressive as a business. James and the team have raised over £150 million to date and are a fully tech-enabled international UK success story. James, welcome to the Zeus Founder and Chief podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. For the audience, can you describe where you are today?
Sure, thank you for having me. I'm currently at home. It's 37 degrees. It's the hottest day ever, but I wish I was in the office, but I made the mistake of not traveling in.
Well, I chickened out and I came into the office today for the benefit of aircon, and we've had the thermometer move around the offices, and I think we've got 34, I think was the highest we got to. But yes, I think being in the office is probably better with the aircon and the benefits that brings. Talk to us around your background, James. And I imagine you get this a lot, so apologies if it's a basic question, but are you a car enthusiast, a petrol head at heart?
Yeah, for sure I am. That's where the business started. But my background is, so I grew up on the Wirral, so my accent not as strong as yours quite, but maybe I'll
trying to drop mine.
And I went to uni. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I did an internship at a fund management company, a company in Liverpool. And I watched their world kind of collapse during the financial crisis. I was only there for 3 months. I think I was the unlucky mascot watching their funds under management half while I was there. But it honestly put me off that life for good. I thought, no control, you're just riding a wave. So I thought I wanted to start a business. And the advice I always read was do something that you're interested in. Do it in an area you're interested in. And as you said, I was passionate about cars. I used to read all these car magazines. I had friends, family members asking me what car should I buy. And I thought, let's do something now. And we saw an idea, which was Rotten Tomatoes, do it for films, aggregating what everyone's saying about a film, giving it a score and saying if it's any good. And we thought, we'll do that for cars. So I set up a super basic website, ran it with my now wife, at the time girlfriend, who designed a few websites. So she set it up. Stayed at my parents' house, I think, for 2.5, 3 years, working on the Wirral, no money. But over time, got us going, got us a bit of traffic. We kind of played around with trying to game Google, got punished a couple of times along the way, but without any money, built up a bit of traffic. And from there, realized that running this content stuff, it's okay, it's good. Consumers liked it. It's never going to make any real money. So we thought we'll use the traffic we got to try and help people buy a car. Because we have people all the time saying, look, I'm trying to buy a car. It's painful. I buy everything else online. Is there another way? And we looked into it and thought there isn't. So we started helping connect consumers with dealers. And then it kind of grew from there.
So what year is this then, just to help us sort of join those jigsaw pieces?
2010 or so.
Okay.
Where we 2011 or so, we started actually selling some cars.
So I know that the original name for the company, or maybe it wasn't at this stage, but it was Carbuzz.
Yeah, that's one.
Obviously, you've now changed that to Carwow. What was the catalyst behind that name change?
So the non-PR, the real boring true answer was we couldn't get the .com. So we knew early we were tiny back then, but we knew we wanted to go international at some point. And we thought if we can't get the .com, it's just going to be confusing. It's going to be one of those things that nags at us. So we managed to pick up Carwow for, I can't remember, very, very little, hundreds of pounds probably. Anything with car in that's short, pronounceable, impossible, super expensive. But we managed to find it, and yeah, we like the name now.
And what's the party message then that you normally give out?
You can spin something around, a wow experience, and that's what we okay. That came second, but
customer service as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. So when you were on this journey, and obviously you said that you started this one because you were fanatic about cars and researching the cars and all that sort of good stuff. What did you want to change in the car buying process? Where did you see those difficulties for either the consumer, or how did you think that you could improve that?
I mean, one of the catalysts was, I remember being with my mum when she was buying a car. My parents always bought Volvos. Right. And she went to the Volvo dealer that they'd been to, I don't know, 3 or 4 cars they bought from there, and her trying to haggle and negotiate with this car dealer who was kind of smirking. And it was me at the time, a teenager, and my mum, and I thought, this guy's just having us on.
Yeah, it's not nice.
it's not a good experience. You're spending a huge amount of money on a new car. So I thought, what can we do there? And realized we put my telephone number up on the website and said, if you're looking to buy a car, give me a ring. And people would ring up and they're like, I've done it before, I don't like it. Is there another way? So I started ringing car dealers at the time, helping connect the two up, and realized that for all the problems that consumers have, car dealers themselves, they have issues as well. They have issues in struggling to hit the targets the manufacturer set and struggling to reach outside of it. Very dependent on that showroom being their local marketing asset, and that's about it at the time.
And did you stumble across a couple of those sort of obstacles, or were you aware of them and you were just trying to figure out a way of bringing those two challenges together?
We were aware of them. It's just when we got speaking to customers and dealers, we realised that both sides have a problem.
Okay.
And then we did that over the phone for, I don't know, 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, and then realised there's something here. It can't be a telephone operation, obviously. So we thought we'll try and bring on a technical co-founder. And very, very lucky, we found a guy called David, who's our CTO, who's a co-founder of the business now. And he turned it into a technology business. So instead of telling me on the phone what you wanted, you could start to enter it on the website.
What was David's background before joining the business then?
He was far more experienced than I was. He was a developer. He'd worked at big companies, Money Supermarket, ThoughtWorks, and very, very fortunate to meet him.
Good man, good man. Well, you obviously can spot some talent as well, so give yourself some credit. When did the shift to online car purchasing really become a thing?
Yeah, very good question. I mean, so we still believe the vast majority, so everyone, almost broadly speaking, everyone uses the internet to research and buy their car. They're working out what car to buy, where to buy it, how to buy it, etc. online. Now, very, very, very few, you're talking less than low single digit percentage will actually buy it, click now, buy now, don't talk to anyone, tiny. So we don't focus too much on facilitating that last bit because we don't think it's the most important bit. We think the most important bit is to work out what to buy, how to buy it, and where to buy it from. Whether you have to speak to someone on the phone or do it all online, it's the least important bit almost of the journey. And I think ultimately that shift only happened in terms of any consumers, any dealers facilitating it with COVID. You almost had two things that happened during COVID. One was the launch of the likes of Kazoo, Carwow in the US, Cinch in the UK. And at the same time, it was COVID, pandemic, shut down, can't do anything with showrooms. Okay, well, let's build some website functionality. That's how the dealers thought. That was the shift that happened. And now the interesting thing you have is the online players, the Cinches, Kazoos, they were initially only going to be online, no showroom whatsoever. Now they're moving towards a much more showroom physical location. And the old school dealers, in inverted commas, they're shifting the other way. They've got their showrooms, but now they're building, or they have built already, all the online. But still, usage of pure online, never speak to anyone, never go to any showroom or test drive, still very, 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 very low.
Interesting sort of thought from myself. I'll say it's interesting, but I remember when I spoke to you and I said how I use Skyscanner, for example. Yeah. So I would use Skyscanner to find a flight or the destination, whatever it may well be, in the cost, and then I'd come off that platform and then I'd go direct to whatever, Jet2, Ryanair, EasyJet, etc. I'm showing you the kind of places that I've looked for holidays. Was that a challenge where you felt that people would use the platform because obviously it's very rich in data, very rich in information, that they would not use you, but you know what I mean, that they would go to the platform to get these such rich and high levels of information, but then move away and then maybe go to a dealer? And is that something that you try to bridge as well?
Yeah, for sure. We know any platform, that's how people often use it. So the way we bridge that is try and work with as many high quality dealers as possible and give consumers a very frictionless way to contact, because there's no financial benefit from doing that. You're not saving any money, and if you're making it as frictionless as possible, then there's no ease of going off platform whatsoever. So we don't see it as a problem. We know we influence far more sales than we actually directly get credit for, but that's fine. We can build that into the cost that we charge dealers or car manufacturers, and we have a rough account for that as well.
So what's the current data pointing to then in terms of sales online versus car showrooms?
So I mean, again, it depends what you define as online. Pure online and never ever speak to anyone, never go to any showroom again. Okay. Very low single digit percentage, I'd say. Some of the car dealers themselves, the public ones, are quite open with that stat. and they share how many they're getting, and it's around that. However, sales where you don't go to a showroom on Carwow over the majority now. So you're talking about 60% or so don't visit the showroom, but that's often because they don't feel the need to. They don't feel the need to test drive. They're happy that there's some form of protection because they're all they've got the kind of money back guarantee, so they can just have it delivered, and they're confident in it.
And is that changing more and more again as people can become more confident with purchasing online, and they've got the information they need, and they're more competent and confident in terms of what a car can do and how a car drives, etc.
Exactly. And this was higher during the pandemic because the dealers were locked down, but you didn't see a massive drop off in sales because of it.
Okay, interesting. So the consumer is what I'd call your actual customer, and that's not to say that the dealers are not important to you, but you need the consumer. Describe what your typical customer, whether it's by age or by car type, however you would define it, just help us understand what a typical customer is for Carwow.
So typical customer. So Carwow historically only sold brand new cars. That was our core part of the market. That was the sole part of the market to start with. Now we help with used cars as well, and we help consumers sell their car. So the profile has changed quite a bit. However, broadly speaking, it is older men. So the majority of our customers are over 50, and around 70-80%, when I last saw it, of registered users were men. Now, we do skew towards because of the new car origins, we do skew towards the kind of nearly new end of used, and people selling their car on Carwow are towards the more expensive, younger cars. So we're not quite kind of representative of the whole market of used and sell your car. And then the user research we show says that, I mean, a car is, largely speaking, a household decision.
Yeah.
So it's discussed as a household, the finances, what you want from the car, etc. And then stereotyping, but this is what we see with the user research. It is then, if you assume a stereotypical male, female, husband, wife type family, it is the husband who does the inquiring and the contact with the dealer. Again, stereotyping, but that is the data that we see.
Over time, and as assuming that the business goes on to decades and decades of existence, then you'll get to a stage where you may start off with a family car because you've got an individual who's bought it because the children, and maybe as the children then get bigger, then you start to get different demographics and different car types in there.
No, for sure. And we see it getting a lot younger and a lot more female in general as well.
Yeah, good. I mentioned the dealers. Talk to us around the dealer network then, and how have you managed to convince dealers to work with you? And to add another layer to that, what was the initial perception of you guys when you entered the market?
So the initial perception, so this was at a time when broadly we were bringing price transparency to new cars, giving the consumer price transparency. You could see across the UK which dealers were selling the same car for what price. Consumers loved it. Dealers either hated it or they embraced it because they were opportunistic and they saw that this is a route to market.
Okay.
And what you got to understand at the time as well is this was a time of oversupply of new cars. There were more cars being built than there were actually people who wanted to buy them. So what the car manufacturers would do is say to the dealer, look, you've got to sell this many cars. And if you don't, you're going to have to buy them yourself. That's what's called pre-registering in the industry. So the dealer has to physically buy the cars and then sell them off later as a used car with very few miles. Very expensive exercise. So what we gave the option for the dealer is, look, rather than buy them yourself, sell them to someone who's further away, who's looking for a good deal. And that's how originally the business grew. Now, over time, that oversupply came down. During COVID, it evaporated. Yeah. Now, since then, it's become the opposite. It's complete undersupply. But our dealer network's healthier than ever. Discounts are lower than they've ever been, almost non-existent on many brands. But still, consumers are using us, comparing dealers, comparing finance types, comparing availability, comparing new versus used, and now selling their car. So we're bigger than ever. So quite a journey with the dealers. Now we're just seen as part of the furniture, a kind of a go-to digital marketing player, and again part of the industry now.
Give me a potentially incorrect or insensitive question. Would you say that you've gone maybe some way, or maybe you've helped Untitled clean that market up a little bit then in terms of that transparency?
Yeah, so we get credited reluctantly, so sometimes we sped up this transparency, much better for consumers, and actually dealers much prefer us as well. They don't want someone who's in the town over selling the same car for a lot less. It's much better for the consumer to know, okay, this is a reasonable price. I'm not looking for the cheapest price. This is a reasonable price and I'm happy to buy. As long as the dealer's helpful, good, local, got a car in stock. So yeah, now again, it's just we're part of the marketing mix for dealers.
I suppose you give the consumer that level of confidence to explore and investigate different sort of price points and different vehicles without thinking I'm going to be pushed into this particular car because maybe they're incentivized to sell.
Exactly, and because we're a marketplace, we've got everything. We've got every make and model, every way of buying it, every age of car, and we can help you sell your car. So you're on the platform already. And then, like I said, if it's easy, if there's nothing to be lost by using Carwow, then that's where consumers shop, and they're shopping across multiple makes, multiple dealers.
Let's touch on your growth, and I'd like you to talk to us around your fundraising to date. So explain to us how you've managed to fuel your growth. And I mentioned in my introduction beforehand that you've raised over £150 million to date. So touch on that. Was that one round? Was that multiple rounds? Types of investors that you brought into the business?
Yeah, sure. So many types of investors over many years. So we raised an angel round 8 years ago now, probably. Almost all of it cold emailing people who'd worked in tech and convincing them. I think we raised 250k that round. Then we raised from a range of, we're very lucky to have what we believe is Europe's best tech investors, VC. So Balderson, Excel, Episode 1, Vitruvian now, growth capital as well. And then more recently, we've raised from quite a few car manufacturers. So Mercedes invested, Volvo invested, and then GLY, which is a Geely company, invested recently as well. So that's really helpful for us because they bring a lot of our revenue comes directly from car manufacturers. And having these, they're only very small minority investments from them. Great way for us to access that knowledge and know what's going on with them.
Was there any friction with getting the OEMs involved there, or was there any sort of indecision by you to invite those parties in, or is that definitely a positive?
These car manufacturers, they all work together on everything anyway. And what we saw when Mercedes invested first was, it ramped up our OEM business almost overnight. They just saw, okay, there's something serious here. We need to look at it properly.
What was your hardest round? The smallest, earliest one, or the largest?
No. Broadly, it gets easier. The first one was the hardest because what we had, revenue was zero, probably almost exactly. No CV, no experience from my side, definitely, more so from David. And yeah, very, very, very difficult. I think the other thing that was hard at the time was there was no automotive startups in tech. Okay. Not a single one in the UK or Europe.
Yeah, okay.
Now there's a lot, but at the time it was just not seen as
in different verticals have been. Yeah, get it. What have those successful investment rounds done to you as an individual or as a CEO? Is that giving you the confidence that we're on the right track? People get it. We are building the right business. We are in the right space at the right time. At the same time, do you wake up in the middle of the night, cold sweats? You've raised large quantums of money, or actually no, we're on the right track and actually all good.
I think I don't have the kind of cold sweats. We raise money as in we've got to prove it. It's more we've got a massive opportunity and are we making the most of it? So that's more kind of internal, how we work. Are we prioritizing the right things? Are we moving fast enough? That's the stuff that keeps me up at night. But I think the only challenge, well, not the only, the biggest challenge we've often faced, particularly in the last, when we raised money last, was more at the time, the market was valuing very capital intensive businesses, very young businesses as well, and businesses that control everything. So if you take cars, for example, the ones who are getting the very high value are the ones who are physically buying cars, moving cars, selling cars.
Yeah. And
we got criticism of, well, why do you want to be a marketplace? You can get much higher revenues. You can control everything much better if you're doing it yourself. And maybe 5 years ago, marketplaces, that was what's great. Brilliant business model. Then it became almost unsexy. And I think now in the last 3 months or so, it's shifted back the other way. Capital light, high margin businesses now back in favor. But probably 100 times better than I do. How that market moves is frustrating at times.
Yeah. And it's it can often be around who's done what, the most recent, and therefore that becomes the sort of the trend to follow. But like I say, you've got you've got proper sophisticated grown-up investors now around that sort of cap table that'll be giving you the insights in terms of what those kind of people are looking for, plus on the return front as well. Let's touch on electric vehicles. So battery electric vehicle sales are running at north of 70% growth year on year. Have you seen an uptick in interest from consumers in terms of moving to EVs, and how does Carwow get its fair share of customers in terms of this new market? And maybe is my data out of date and you've got some new stats to throw
No,
at
no,
us?
that's about right. I mean, simply put, electric is the future. It's going that way, and it's a one-way street. So by 2035 across Europe has to be electric, 2030 in the UK. And we have an internal mantra that we want to speed up the pace of change, the acceleration into electric.
Okay.
But we do a lot to push people towards electric. So you build a petrol car or a diesel car, we'll recommend the most similar electric. And we're big believers that if you can afford to buy a brand new car, your next car should be electric for 90% of consumers. And the way that it's a huge opportunity for Carwow, because the electric car revolution is a new car revolution. Very few used electric cars out there. The battery range increases significantly every year. So there's a real reason to upgrade your electric car in 3 years' time or 4 years' time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We love that change. And it's a brilliant opportunity for us as well, because you need that education as a consumer, particularly when you buy your first electric car. So you probably know what a good MPG is, what a decent BHP is, etc., because you bought a few cars over the last decade or so. You don't know what a kilowatt is, kilowatt hours, range easy to understand, but
what does it mean to me? Yeah,
exactly. So there's a huge amount of education that electric car buyers have, and so they're even more likely to find Carwow. So as a result, we over-index 40% on the market to electric ownership. And now in Germany, the majority of cars, so just over 50% now, are pure electric.
So again, you'll see those sort of demographics, I assume, changing as well, whether it's by car type or household, again, as you're starting to see that movement. Interesting that you say it's a one-way bet, and I think anyone that you sort of talk to sees that, and you see more and more electric cars. It's just, I think it's the challenge, take out supply chain for the moment, but is around the infrastructure that wraps around it. And there's a big head, like just looking at the UK, for the UK to get over. If you look at Norway, phenomenal, and they've got it right, and it's you'd see every car be electric. The UK still's got a way to go.
It has, but I mean, I've driven electric now for 5 years,
right?
And it's just not that bad. As in, you occasionally to a very long journey, you got to stop a bit at a petrol station, but 99% of your journeys, it's just so much better.
Yeah, and how often are you doing long journeys anyway? And all that sort of good stuff. And looking at petrol prices today, as we stand, do you want to do a long journey? Do you want to do a long journey in the petrol? Yeah.
But we see we did a press release about it as those petrol prices went massively sky high. I can't remember 2 months ago, 3 months ago, the Ukraine war. Yeah, interest in electric, very similar pattern as well.
He searches will go through the roof as well. Yeah, interesting. There's a perception that Carwow can only prosper in an oversupplied new car market, which is clearly not on the agenda for the next couple of years. What would you say to challenge that view?
I mean, our revenue has grown significantly in the crazy undersupply that we've had at the moment.
Right.
And that's not just across new, it's also because we've gone into helping consumers sell their car, which is a whole other market that's not touched by the new car supply, and then into used as well. Used because we want to show you the new car next to the most similar nearly new car, and because dealers want us to help them sell more used cars as well. So I would say that the undersupply has been great for Carwow in the kind of medium long term, because it shifted us into other verticals where we can help our consumers, help our dealers. So perfect crossover synergy. If that hadn't happened, we probably stayed a bit lazy and just kept with new car and enjoyed that roaring kind of new car market for us. So that shift, it's impacted the new car revenue, or it did, but now it's stronger than ever.
Listening to you talk around electric, general supply, selling cars now, used car, are you able to point to where you'll see your biggest growth area, or do you have so many sort of different verticals within your own business all pointing in one direction that actually they're all growing at such phenomenal?
Yeah, we're lucky. And the other one we haven't mentioned is the car manufacturer revenue. So that's car manufacturers directly paying for us. Either they receive inquiries themselves, so largely the car manufacturers who sell direct will use us,
Okay.
or they're paying for marketing on the site. Now, again, it's growing very, very, very nicely, but it would be even faster if it wasn't for the lack of supply. Broadly, though, we think wind forward 2 years or so, the sell your car part of the business. So that's helping consumers sell their cars, creating an online auction where dealers bid. That should be the biggest part of our market in terms of revenue split, because it's the largest overall category in the market.
So just to step away a little bit then from where my line of question was going, for anyone who's listening to the podcast who isn't listening to it from a business or sort of economy kind of perspective, potentially almost like a sales plug, how does that work? Who collects my car? What happens? I've got a car to sell, any vehicle, James, doesn't matter what you pick. I put it on the website. Just talk us a little bit through that journey.
So you've got a car to sell. So either you're selling it because you want to dispose of it, or most frequently you're selling it because you want to buy a new car, as in new or used. So that's the great reach we have. We've got so many people already looking for their next car, so we help them sell their car as well. So the way it works is you get your phone, you either use our site or download the app, you take photos of it on your driveway, you let us know the mileage, any damage, and then that goes live and dealers bid to buy your car from you. So you're creating an auction for your own car. Now you choose the winning bid. Included in that bid is the cost of collection, so free collection from your house. And then the dealer or a third party that we send will come around to your house, confirm that the car is as described as the photo showed. They'll transfer the money to you instantly, and then they'll drive away in your old car once you've received the money. So super convenient.
Mm-hmm.
We've done some user research. 83% get the best price when they use Carwow.
Brilliant.
So very, very clear consumer proposition. And then more complicated because of the way the industry works, but broadly, dealers really, really like it because they can buy direct from consumers.
Nice. And again, think of the number of people that got cars, eventually going to sell it, move towards electric potentially. What does that mean? Well, there's a big addressable market for you guys to go to. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I probably should have asked you that earlier on. It looks like you are now working more closely with OEMs, and we've mentioned obviously some of those have come on board as investors. How do you see the future of Carwow as some of the OEMs decide to go down their own sort of agency model route?
Yeah. So for those in the industry, big trend that car manufacturers want to control the sales process for particularly their new cars, so that dealers will act as almost an agent. So there'll be no price difference between dealers. You'll buy the car actually directly from the car manufacturer, so largely through their website is what they hope or plan. We love that trend. We want it to happen as soon as possible for a couple of reasons. It's great for the consumer. It's much easier to have that fixed price and that confidence that you're buying directly from the car manufacturer. And then selfishly for Carwow, it's going to be a brilliant trend for us because car manufacturers will then be able to track exactly where they're getting consumers from, what digital marketing is working. And that's our biggest challenge at the moment. Car manufacturers spend a lot of money marketing with us, but then they can't tie up what it's actually doing because it's all via dealers. With this, they'll need more routes than ever to market because they can't rely on the dealers themselves for it. So we think more and more and more will spend directly with Carwow. And they'll be earning more money per car, so they can afford even more marketing spend. So we love that trend. And again, it's a very big reason why these three big car manufacturers invested in us. Because they're embracing that trend themselves. In fact, they're leading it, those three often. And they see us as a core route to market with it.
Let's talk around internationalization and how you've grown into different territories. You built a good, I'd say very good presence in Germany. You mentioned obviously some of those stats earlier on in the conversation, and it is a large market, but it's one that many people have gone to and it's difficult. It's, many have failed. What are you most excited around in this particular territory, thinking around Germany, and how do you replicate that across other European countries if you're to look to do that?
Yeah, so we launched in Germany about 5 years ago now, and launched in Spain as well about 3 years ago. So Germany is fantastic, bigger now for new cars than the UK. And we love Germany because it should become our biggest market overall,
right?
Purely because the car market's bigger in Germany.
Yeah.
Germans love their cars. The car manufacturers, a lot of power obviously sits in Germany. So it really helps with obviously Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Volkswagen, etc. So yeah, we see a very bright future for Germany. Spain as well works nicely, smaller market, more impacted by the kind of general kind of post-COVID recovery, but a really good market for us. And again, we're number one there as well.
We're in, I'd say, challenging economic conditions or a challenging economic environment, yet significant investment is required to continue your growth and your growth trajectory. Are there any ways in which you can try to box clever and reduce spend, but still maintain a strong market presence? You touched upon that marketing spend earlier and how that large spend can increase in terms of hitting the bottom line, etc. Given the challenges that we're all currently experiencing, how does Carwow pivot?
Yeah, so we're being mindful of that. I think it's less on the cost control. It's more because we've shifted to add used and sell your car. New car is obviously quite a cyclical market. Used and having to sell your car, pretty rock solid. Doesn't change that much through recessions or boom times. Pretty solid. So we love the fact that we're growing into that bit, and that should offset any kind of new car cyclicality. On the new car, however, we've been in a sticky kind of market situation where you've got the worst supply of new cars in my lifetime, and until recently, pretty booming demand as well. Okay. There's a marketplace that's horrible because, largely speaking, the supply side, dealers, car manufacturers, they don't really need a marketplace.
Yeah.
So that's been tough. So bad for the world, but we actually quite like the slowdown, the kind of macroeconomic slowdown, because it is impacting consumer demand. But that helps us because the dealers, the car manufacturers who actually pay our bills need us more. So we've seen record sign up in dealers and car manufacturers who are working with us. So we actually quite like that slowdown. As long as it doesn't get too bad, it's actually a very, very good trend for us because of the supply challenge.
You touched on Germany. You said you love that as a geography, and you performing exceptionally well there. In Spain, you've been there now for a number of years, and again that is performing well for you. What about the US in terms of, is that a market where, and I'm sure you get this question often, so I'm not exactly splitting the atom here, but have you been tempted to look at the US, and it's massive in its nature in terms of size and scale, populations, etc. What mistakes have you seen people make? And sort of True Car example kind of springs to mind. Talk around the US.
Yeah, so it is something we'd like to one time, no kind of immediate plans. Which is a very big market, particularly if you zoom in. There's 2 or 3 states that are absolutely mammoth, million plus cars in each state per year. So we launched in one of those states and roll it out. We've got a big YouTube presence in the US as well, which would help us launch. And broadly, we think the consumer experience is worse in the US than it is Europe.
Yeah.
You've got a couple of big players out there, largely on the used car side. No one's really cracked new. And then True Car, as you mentioned, I mean, underperforming business for now, I don't know, 6-7 years, almost since it was public. Really hasn't cracked a very strong consumer proposition or a strong dealer proposition. Lots of leadership changes, so we don't see that as the kind of biggest direct threat, but no immediate plans. I think if it wasn't for the new car supply issues, we'd be a lot sooner on it. But again, one day we'd like to, but nothing yet.
So 2 questions kind of wrapped in one as we head towards finishing our conversation, James. One with a bit of hindsight and one looking at tomorrow, as it were. Looking at what you've done today, are any mistakes that you've made or anything that you've done that you wish you'd done differently? And if not, any sort of lessons that you've learned along the way? And what does the future look like for Carwow? More international locations, obviously said the US would not, is sort of on the radar, but not one for tomorrow, or is a public market listing on the agenda, maybe again not tomorrow given the current market conditions. So things that you've either learned or regretted along the journey, and then what does the future look like?
Yeah, I mean, it'd take another 45 minutes at least to go through mistakes and regrets.
and you wouldn't want to tell everyone listening to them about them anyway, would you?
No, we're open with that kind of stuff. So, I mean, broadly speaking, the biggest mistake, and what I've made more than a few times, is hiring the wrong person.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
I mean, I'm a big believer that every business has its own culture, way of working, and it changes over the scale and life cycle of the company. But we hired some wrong people for the wrong time at Carwow, and it caused lots of issues, slowed us down in lots of areas. Big impact to the culture, particularly about 2 years ago. And And it all came down to a small number of bad hires.
And did you take too long to rectify that, or potentially get those business out of the business, or you're quite ruthless?
Fairly quick to rectify the problem, but
well done.
it doesn't take long to cause problems.
Yeah, okay.
And I think we also burnt a fair few people who've been with us for quite a long time in an area. Let's make it up, marketing.
Yeah.
You hire someone in to run marketing who is the wrong hire, and frankly, it kind of burns through some of the long-standing people who think this person's worse than me or not great at this scale at this stage. Very, very painful. But yeah, rectified, but still kicked us back significantly in where we could be if we hadn't made those.
So then, just to pause on that, then. So obviously, and not everyone gets every recruit right, and even in our business, you have to sometimes go in your gut, and your gut can sometimes deceive you. How will you learn from those lessons? Then I'm assuming you'll go, well, we'll do another 2 interviews or do something else. How do you get that, or how do you reduce the number of bad hires then? Go on.
Well, yeah. So in the early days, it was all with my gut. I mean, we hire people after. I had lunch with Matt, who runs all our content, Matt Watson, and that was it. The interview process was over. The first person we hired, it was a coffee, and that was it. David, it was a coffee, and that was it. Done.
And everyone's always great first conversation, aren't they?
Well, yeah, but my gut went off a bit, I think, over and now it's a super boring answer, but it's just a really structured interview process. So meet lots of people, different people grill on different areas. So you're not being asked, as a candidate, you're not being asked the same question every time. So we share all the questions asked, answers, lots of in-depth referencing. I learned pretty quickly that if you ring someone up for a reference and they're kind of relatively warm, that means they're crap. It's only if they're kind of overflowing with praise that's when you think, okay, there's something there. Because everyone's quite polite on a reference call, but if they're quite polite and quite warm, then that's a negative signal.
We're still very British, aren't we?
Yeah, for sure.
So then, because I've dived in a couple of times on that question, what does the future look like for Carwow, international exit options, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so over the next kind of 12, 18 months, big focus on just horizontal expansion. So we're bringing Sell Your Car into Germany imminently, bringing used cars into Germany as well. We've got massive reach. And again, it's helping our existing consumer, existing dealer, and continuing that in the UK, and at one point Spain as well. So that's the focus, and wait for the new car supply to come back a fair bit. And in terms of, we're not looking to exit in terms of acquisition, but we do think going public at some point is the best route to grow the business. When that'll be, who knows what the markets will be in 12 months, 18 months, but we think that could be a great way to continue growing the business.
So James, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. I always finish the podcast with the same question, although people may be rolling their eyes now at this stage, but you need to answer it as one of our guests. If you're at a dinner table, it's your final dinner. It might be a death row dinner, it could be your final dinner because you've had some terrible news about tomorrow, the apocalypse is incoming or something. Aside from your family, so there's the first caveat. Who would be your 3 guests, and just give us a little one-liner around why?
I didn't realize it was my death row dinner. I thought it was like have a dinner tomorrow night type. I'll give what I would do in terms of not my death row dinner, because that would change it completely.
Okay.
But I would do if we could have it at the moment. I think very common answer. I'm sure Elon Musk. I think he's the entrepreneur of our generation. Mad but brilliant, and I'm sure he'd be very, very interesting views. I'd have Xi Jinping, because I think China's fascinating, and what they could do or with the world or could not do is kind of terrifying, but also the opportunity. Fascinating, and the opportunities could be massive. I think that discussion between Elon and him could be good. And then I'd also put in the Queen, because I think she's been through. I can't think of many people who've been through more change, both in what she's seen herself, what she's experienced herself personally, and seen the world change. I think we give a very interesting perspective on everything.
The Queen, I seem to feel like I'm shocked every time now, and I don't know if there's been a perception change, or maybe people have watched Netflix drama series. I don't know, but the Queen's come up 3 times. You're either the 3rd or the 4th, and I don't know. I find it really interesting. Actually, I think it's a positive thing that actually people do
She
suggest
had
the
some good
quiz.
stories. I think after a few.
Yeah. No, she's definitely met a couple of people, if nothing else. So go on then. Who would be your death row guests then? Why and why would they be different?
It's 37 degrees. I can't think off the top of my head right now.
I will let you off. And
Next time.
I've definitely taken enough of your time on a 37-degree day, James. Thank you for joining us
Thank
in
you
the
very
Farming
much.
Chief. It's been a
Enjoyable.
pleasure to catch up with you, mate.
Cheers, Bob.
Take care. Thank you for listening. If you're an entrepreneur or CEO and have a story you would like to feature, or would like to suggest a founder you'd like to hear from, drop us a line at live@zeuscapital.co.uk. That's live, LIVE, at zeuscapital.co.uk. Or follow us on social media at Founder and Chief. Don't forget to subscribe on your favourite podcast app. This content is issued by Zeus Capital Limited, which is authorised and regulated in the United Kingdom by the Financial Conduct Authority for designated investment business and is a member firm of the London Stock Exchange. Nothing in this podcast should be viewed as investment advice. Listeners should consult an investment professional before making any decisions regarding topics mentioned in this podcast. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and not of Zeus. Please note that participants in this podcast may have financial interests in the matters discussed.